Hello, 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 America. Hello, rest of the
Morning.
world. It's great to be with you all. It's the American Awakening Squad from around the U.S., all points, from Boston to Hawaii and in between, north and south and everywhere, bringing you the Signs of Life show. We show up every day here, black and white, Latino, Asian, from all parts of the country to tell the world God's got you, God loves you, we're better together. And we're going to keep hanging with you through this crazy coronavirus time. Kick us off today. We've got our house worship leader, Josh Jacob. Josh, what do you have for us?
Thanks, John. This is a song of hope, and it's by my favorite guy, John Mark McMillan. So, river of gladness fill my soul. Jesus, you're my greatest star. God, I know. I see the light. I see the lightning. I hear your voice inside the cracking thunder. Saying, nothing stands between us. So nothing stands between us. But love now. Nothing stands between us, so nothing stands between us but love. River of gladness, take control. There's a cup of joy for every taste and sorrow. I see the light, I see the lightning, I hear your voice. Inside the cracking thunder, singing, nothing stands between us, so nothing stands between us, but love now. Oh, nothing stands between us, so nothing stands between us, but love now. Nothing stands between us, but nothing stands between us but love. Have I tried to scare you was in vain? To cross the seas I pushed against your ways. What for all the miles have you to say? Were you there beside me this whole way? You always find me in between the thunder and the lightning. You always find me in between the thunder and the lightning. You always find me in between the thunder and the lightning. You always find me in between the thunder and the lightning. You always find me in between the thunder and the lightning.
Woo. Oh, man. I never heard that song. That was awesome.
It's beautiful. Who's it from, Josh? I'm sorry, I missed the outset.
It's John Mark McMillan. Song's called "Nothing Stands Between Us."
That's
wow.
Yeah, you've shared with us how influenced you've been by John Mark and his music, and I feel that just channeling through you, man. Really appreciate that so much. We're going to talk today about the reality of sacrifice. Our fearless leader, Marissa, has queued that up for today's discussion. Before we get to that, we're going to go to Joel Searby and Pastor Joel in Gainesville, Florida. Pastor, what do you have for us today?
Hey, everybody. Welcome. Great to have you guys. I'm coming to you from Florida. And, I've got my small town America uniform on today. I was thinking about the fact that we got folks watching and listening from all over the country and the world. And wherever you're from, we just want you to know that we're glad you're here. We hope you have different perspectives than us and different perspectives from each other, because if we can gather together and do something real every day, then we think there might be some hope, and we really believe that. Quick daily dose for you today, some hope and light and life for your day, is coming from the life of David, this towering figure in the Bible who actually had a really tough life. And he comes to the end of his life and he's reflecting on just how hard it was. And he uses some pretty tough language. He says, like, the waves of death swirled about me. The torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled around me. The snares of death confronted me. I mean, this is powerful, strong, pretty awful language. And yet he comes to the end of his life and he's able to say this about God, that God was my rock, my fortress, my deliverer, my refuge, my shield, my salvation, my stronghold. And then he says with shouts of praise, the Lord lives, praise be to my rock, exalted be God, the rock, my salvation. How? How does he do this when he's had such a hard life? And how do we, if we're in the midst of something really tough, or even in the midst of something good, how do we remember God? And the one little bit I want to encourage you today with is this idea of zooming in and zooming out. You know, we typically live life zoomed way in, right into our day's circumstances, into the things that are happening to us right now, the things we're dealing with right now, today, in this moment. And that's not all bad. That's part of what it means to take one step after the other and live in that daily bread that God gives us. But there's also a really important spiritual principle of being able to zoom out and see the big picture of what God has been up to in history and in our lives. And as David is doing that at the end of his life, he realizes God has really been there. He's been there, as Josh said in the song, in between the lightning and the thunder. God has been there. And so I would encourage you today, if you're feeling down or you're feeling like caught in your day's circumstances or caught in something related to coronavirus or being out of a job, take a minute. Don't just zoom in and focus on that circumstance, but zoom out and remember what God has done. That's your daily dose. Back to you, John.
Thank you, Joel. And as always, I'd like to take a moment and see what does it mean for you, Joel? What does it mean how do you do the zoom out? And anybody else who might have a zoom out suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really about what I let happen to my mind, right? We all have this thing going on in our head all the time, this internal conversation. And if I'm fixating on and thinking constantly about all the kind of negative or tough or immediate things, sometimes I need to check myself and say, let me step back. And I can do that by something as simple as like taking a walk and just kind of letting something bigger like nature or the expansiveness of God take over in my head and not just think about what's immediately in front of me.
So would your biggest go-to be take a walk?
That's one of my biggest ones. Yeah. If I feel like I'm really caught up in my day in like the immediacy of the problems right now, get out and take a walk.
Marissa, how about you?
Yeah. How do I zoom out? I think honestly, I like to get into a place of worship. I really do. I just like to get into a zone, lights on in a room, lights off. I don't care. But I really like just to have worship, lyrics, and music enveloping me. A lot of times, especially if I'm starting to feel overwhelmed, what's going to overwhelm my overwhelmedness, the words of God. So it works for me.
So worship, lyrics for you, a walk for Joel. Okay. That's good. That's good. That's really helpful. Jeff, do you have anything on that? And then we'll take the conversation to you and your go-to.
Yeah, no, I thought that was great. I'll start just weaving it into something to chew on today too. No, I totally agree with Joel. I think, going for a walk, getting outside, or Marissa too. I think just kind of centering yourself with some worship. I do think music is more powerful than we let it be. I think we think of worship as just some kind of emotional thing, which at levels it's touching us there, but I think it's actually so much part of actually how we work and how we operate that there's something that it actually touches. Music can communicate in ways that just when we don't have language, and we see the scripture just full of music and the Psalms and David and all of that stuff. So what's fascinating about my thought for today is it's a different thought at some level, or complementary, but it's literally the exact same language Joel was using. I literally had this picture. I was going to start off with this concept of zooming in and zooming out, not even joking, which is hilarious. And what I was going to talk about from this other perspective is something to chew on for today is a lot of times I think we can, especially people who are watching or Christians or followers of Jesus, who have kind of trained in the scripture or familiar with the scripture, a lot of times when you're in that tradition, you can zoom into the scriptures a lot, meaning like a lot of us, know verses and we kind of John 3:16 and we get them tattooed and all that stuff. But a lot of people are very either whether you want to call it anemic or just kind of elementary level intelligence on the zoom out. And what I mean by that is like a lot of us know the verses, a lot of us don't know the story. A lot of us don't know what's actually going on from Genesis to Revelation. And that I think hurts us. I think that hurts a lot of us because there's something really, really impactful when you zoom out and you see, okay, what's the big arc? What's the meta narrative, as theologians call it? What's the big story? And there's a lot of them, but there's a lot of themes, but one really easy one that I think is really helpful and something to chew on for today is in the very first chapter of scriptures, we see this concept of a garden. God creates this beautiful place that's ordered, tamed, and cultivated, and then kind of tells the image bearers, go make the rest of the world look like this. Now, if you zoom all the way to the end of the book, you don't see a garden, right? When you get to the last chapter of the book, you don't see the exact same thing. What you see is a city. It says New Jerusalem comes down from heaven as a bride adorned for her husband. So we go from garden to a city. Now, I think that's a really helpful concept because how do you get from a garden to a city? It's not a trick question. You get there by building, by cultivating, by laying one brick at a time, right? And you do that in a communal way. No one can build a city on their own. And also I think the city is not just actually going to be real, but I also think it's a metaphor for what does a city represent? A city represents, if you go to Manhattan, Boston, any of these other places, cities represent multicultural, multi-diversity, different languages, races, food, politics, art, lawyers, medicine, you can go on and on. Cities kind of represent everything kind of coming together as this really beautiful collective. And so my encouragement to you today, or something to chew on today, is that's where we're going. That is the narrative of Scripture. It's the narrative of the New Testament or the whole Scripture is that we are building a city, that he's making a new family out of everyone who wants to participate on earth. And that seems to me a lot more compelling than hey, we get to go to, this place in the sky where there's a bunch of babies wearing wings, and playing harps, which is more of a medieval picture, not an actual scriptural picture. And so for me, that's something to chew on for today is the vision every single day when you wake up. Is it going there? Does it take you there? And can you say, oh man, how cool is it that I get to use my life as a life that just takes one brick every single day and tries to help start building that city? So that's something to chew on for today. And back to you guys.
Jeff, have you ever done that little bit before?
Not specifically in that way. I just thought of it because I wrote about it a little bit in a different way in one of my books like 5 or 6 years ago. But no, not anything besides that. That
is just something which is transporting for me. That idea of I've heard it evoked in certain ways, but the idea of whether you're part of building to that city or not, that is something that kind of connects the dots between the garden, that city to come, and thy kingdom come, that will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's like all the pieces, all the bits, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. One, I think it's also helpful too to even, use the language too of like we're marching towards that city. It kind of gives you a direction, a place, a location, a destination.
Wow. Those are some powerful visuals, man. Yeah. I really appreciate it. Before we kick it over to Calvin, do you have anything on that, Marissa?
Man, again, what a goal, right? You say, I have no clue, Lord, what I think your purpose for my life is. Well, let your life be used to build brick by brick towards the city of God.
Totally. Amen.
I think there's I wish I could call it up more quickly, but I think in both the work of St. Augustine, I think there's language to that same sort of effect, as well as Martin Luther King, sort of the themselves allowing, in the difficulties of the day, them allowing themselves to imagine that celestial city of which for them was clearly very tangible, like what was like, all right, it's really bad right now. But what in the midst of the pain and the sadness and the difficulty, that longing for that special place becomes that much more tangible. And clearly, it seems to me, and I wish I could call it the language, but I'm going to see if I can check on it while Calvin's talking and figure it out. It takes them, out of the pain of the day into the zoom out. And then back to the day, because they can live real in the day itself. So
totally. Also, anyone else got the big air? Is someone got the big air conditioner going? Does anyone else hear that or something?
I'm hearing an air conditioner going. I can't.
Someone's just staying nice and cool. I like that.
I'm hearing the nice blowy in the background.
Who muted? Because it was you, Joel. It was you.
What was it, Joel?
Well, I don't know. Right when you muted it.
There you go. It must be me. I'll kick it off while Cal.
You've got air conditioning blowing in the
I
background.
don't have an air conditioner, but there's something, some wind, some noise.
It's the AC, yeah.
Oh, for heaven's sake! You ruined the audio on our show with your.
That's what happens when you live in Florida and Hawaii, right there.
Oh my! All right, so Marissa's frozen, so we're going to take her off the screen for a little bit while we kick it over to Cal.
That was a great screen capture, though. She got a good one right there.
You got a good one. More technology issues. If it's not Joel with his AC, it's Marissa with the freeze up.
That's right. This is half the fun.
And just for all the folks and friends that are out there and Peru that are watching us, and the Philippines and India, just to let you know that the technology problems aren't completely solved here in the U.S. Just to let you know.
That is real. So I'll try to buy you guys all some time. Joel, for you and the AC, John, you and that St. Augustine quote, and Marissa to get her Wi-Fi fixed. But yeah, everyone,
no
it's
pressure.
So good to be with each and every one of you. And like every show, just want to bring you a few headlines of what is going on out in the world. So first, as companies are working to return to business, concerned workers around the country are pursuing a new goal, making sure employers don't prematurely roll back protection measures. So Target employees, some of whom walked off their jobs on May 1st over working conditions, have raised concerns about the company's decision to resume services that had been suspended to reduce potential virus exposure. At Amazon, same thing. Some workers who also joined the May Day protests said they were upset over the end of company policy of unlimited unpaid time off. So Mark Perrone, the president of the United Food and Commercial Workers International, said the union planned to begin advocating for the interests of non-union workers. He said, over the last 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, we've been focusing on making sure our folks had personal protective equipment, that people were getting their pay, that we were addressing those issues legislatively. Now, we're going to do the same thing on their behalf to put some weight behind them. Next, U.S. doctors are agonizing over how to ration limited supplies of remdesivir, an experimental drug shown to be effective against corona. So Dr. Rochelle Walensky, chief of infectious diseases at Mass General Hospital, said that we know the doses of remdesivir that we are going to get are not going to be enough to treat every patient that we have in the hospital now, and every patient that is going to be coming in the weeks ahead. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration authorized remdesivir for emergency use earlier this month, but there's only enough supply in the world for about 100,000 to 200,000 patients, according to the drug's maker, Gilead Sciences. So as the drug trickles into hospitals, mostly in regions with the largest outbreaks, doctors are grappling with how to ration the few vials they will be getting. Mass General, like hospitals all around the country, will be faced with the extremely challenging decision on how to allocate the hospital's limited supply. And lastly, the House plans to introduce a bipartisan bill to create a national public health corps that will employ hundreds of thousands to help conduct testing, contact tracing, and eventually vaccinations of those infected or potentially infected with coronavirus. So first-term Republican Chrissy Houlihan, first-time Rep. Chrissy Houlihan, a Pennsylvania Democrat, and Michael Waltz, a Florida Republican, proposed repurposing the Peace Corps and their volunteers and other national service participants who have lost their jobs during the pandemic. In partnership with the Corporation for National and Community Service and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention and Health and Human Services, the Corps will hire 200,000 to 300,000 people and place them all across the country to help. So there you have it. I bought you guys enough time as I possibly can. Some amazing stories of leaders in every space and industry choosing to sacrifice their own agendas, their priorities, and even their differences in the service and care of the greater whole. So now I hope she's back, but I'm going to pitch it over to Marissa, who will introduce our discussion question of the day. Marissa, she's back. Let's go.
I'm back. Can you guys hear me? We good?
Yes.
We good.
We're good.
Right. Fantastic. Well, yeah. So as everybody in the world knows, we're all just trying to figure out how to do life and how to settle into this new normal. A few of those stories today that you just heard from Calvin highlight just a few areas where people are contending daily with this idea of sacrifice and self-sacrifice on behalf of others. And so, guys, we're people of faith. Sacrifice is a cornerstone of who we are and what we believe. I mean, Jesus gave the ultimate sacrifice, and then the Bible sort of explicitly tells us that we're supposed to be loving and praying and caring for, neighbors and widows and orphans and our enemies and basically everybody. Times of faith and actually prayer and fasting, those are sort of supposed to be regular rhythms of sacrifice in our lives. And since it's something that we're familiar with, I guess my question is, in this big time of wrestling where everybody's trying to figure out how to do it, and maybe, folks don't have much of a foundation there, is there anything that folks of faith can offer to, this world around us as people are trying to figure out this sacrifice thing? I mean, is there anything that we can model now? Is there any sort of insight that we have to the reality of sacrifice that could be really helpful for folks right now? What do you guys think?
Come on, Marissa. You had all the time off the air to think about your presentation question. So what are you going to lead with for us? Come on.
Well, again, as I was thinking about this, really, I was digging in this and thinking about how, we sacrifice because of love, right? Our core thing is love. God's love for us led to God's sacrifice, our love for God. If not our love for people, we should be loving people. But even if we don't love people, if we love God, that's the core of why we're sacrificing. So to me, there might be some sort of disconnect. I don't know, if you have never experienced the love of God, maybe the depths to which people are being asked to sacrifice now, maybe there's no context for it. Maybe it's harder than and people know what to do with. And so this idea of, can we model something more? I think we've got to, but I think this notion of how to translate sort of where we are to where somebody else is. I mean, I think probably, like always, the Holy Spirit's going to need to do something, because somebody's going to have to be awakened to something on their own to sort of be able to come at this sacrifice thing, sort of, I guess, from what seems natural to us. I don't know. What are your thoughts, John? I mean, again, this like, how do you sort of communicate this thing that's so core to us and our rhythms, and why, it might seem like it's horrible, but it probably won't be that bad. How do you sort of communicate that to people,
Yeah, well, I think I certainly think you're on to something onto a lot of it in the part about unless you understand that you are loved, and therefore in the good version of being captive to love, right? Not the bad version of being captive to love, whatever it might mean, like 50 Shades of Grey or something. I don't know. But
I don't know if I'd call that love, John. I
didn't see it. I didn't read it. It was a joke. The fact that we are captive to God's love, we know we are. In our best selves we are. And then if you know that, when you can tap into that, when you can understand that and feel it, then you're just yourself is just a steward of whatever you got, either your physical capacities or your financial wherewithal or your time or whatever it is. Then you're like, well, it's not a sacrifice. It's like, oh, it's rightly ordered living. It's not like, oh, I'm actually sacrificing myself. It's like, oh, this is not mine in the first place, and I'm just an instrument of love. Now, in the real world, living like that is hard. We all know that, but we all probably can resonate with having some moments that are like that. I think. I hope.
I think I think there's a way in which, to flip this on its head a little bit, we can also offer grace to those who maybe are not living sacrificially.
Sure.
And there's two reasons why I would say that. One is that we know we don't always live sacrificially. So let's just be humble, right? Just plain old humility instead of judging other people. How could you? How dare you? But also in the same way that you're talking about, Marissa, is like maybe they haven't experienced the love of God, or maybe they never experienced even the love of another human. And so to then expect someone to understand self-sacrificial love, even at some basic level of like one of the hot debates right now, which is like, oh, well, I hear people, especially Christians, saying things on one side of the mask argument, like, how could you possibly not wear a mask? That's so unloving and so selfish. You're not protecting other people. And even the way that's phrased is like, you assume that the person on the other side of that debate understands, like at a deep level, that they should try to love other people that way. Right. And if they don't understand that, they don't understand. And so you give them some grace in that sense. And by modeling that same grace, hopefully you're drawing them in, instead of them feeling attacked, you're drawing them into like, wait a minute, but you are wearing a mask only because you're trying to help somebody else. Like, you don't actually want to, you're not a liberal, you're not, confused by the deep state or some crazy thing like that. No, I'm actually just trying to protect other people.
I think that I'd push that a turn further, Joel. I think the real touch point on that, of course, extending grace for the reasons you said, totally agree. But I think the real rub of it is a turn further, is that you feel the sadness, that if in those moments you can feel the sadness that they don't actually know what that love is, and they don't know that some part of them is to be abandoned to something else. Yeah. And that's something which of course is, you extend grace, quote unquote, if it's really hard for you, it's really hurting you personally, if that's a decision of the will, for sure, on some level. But another level is just like, okay, that person just, it's sad they don't feel that. It's sad that they don't feel the freedom that comes with being, held captive to that love, and the liberty which comes with that. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, I love that because, again, you didn't use the word, but this notion of like compassion, which again, like the word talks about Jesus being moved by compassion. And, this is a very emotional time, but if we as folks of faith who feel like God has been chasing us forever, and all that we enjoy in God is not because of anything we deserve, but because God just is lavishing it on us. How can we not be compassionate to folks that are legit struggling in every sort of way right now? But for, again, I know it's cliche, but for the grace of God, am I not racked with anxiety that keeps me from leaving my house, or but for the grace of God, am I not, pushing my way to the front of grocery lines or something because I'm afraid I won't be able to get the bread or something. I don't know. But yeah.
Sorry. No, Jeff, go ahead.
Take it, Calvin. You had something to say.
No. I just want to kind of go off the compassion thing, but the real thing is, like, the compassion can be hard amidst like very real pain, though, right? Like sometimes it's hard to love. Sometimes it's hard to really to sacrifice and really care for someone in that way, especially when you've been hurt deeply. And so I think actually there's the grace point actually adds also another element of personal sacrifice, which is that I'm even willing to lay down the offense, my own pain, that can ultimately lead to compassion. And I think, not only can it witness to the glory of God, but I think we all believe also in its potency in being deeply collectively transformative. But sorry, Jeff, take it, man.
Well, no, I love that. I don't have much more to say than what all you guys said. I thought that was just amazing and super. I was just listening, taking it in. I think the one thing that we have to remember as followers of Jesus, like we've talked about all the time, is not just that we're called to sacrifice and called to like kind of lay down our lives, but I think we have to also give credence to the fact that that's actually what Jesus says will bring you the most joy. So I think a lot of times we do that, or we say things about sacrifice and all those things as almost like begrudgingly, or it's going to like hurt, and it will. There's a level of like it does, but Jesus clearly seems to be saying that there's a different, more truer reality. There's a kingdom economic that is real. This isn't just like some like, oh, do it because that actually in that economic, there's more joy. It will go better. It'll do well for you. It'll pay off. And all these different types of things, back to that city, that is actually how you build that city, is by actually using materials from that place, and materials from that place are based on, living in that kind of ethic or under that kind of constitution. So yeah, I think we have to just keep that in mind too, that I think a lot of times sacrifice, we always see it as just like more, what's the word? Just like, super painful, like just like self-inflicting, and it is, but it's like Jesus says there is something secretive there too, that like it actually will be more joy. There's like a hidden joy.
Yeah. And there's stuff that gets stripped away, and that's like the sacrifice gets it's willingly laying down something that probably needed to go away anyways, right? And so there's just
the painful parts are probably the parts that are washing away from us that need to wash away.
But again, even outside of that context, even if you don't know that they need to go away, even if you don't, even if you haven't had an experience with God, I think the truth is that we all see on some level now that life is dependent on us doing it together. Nobody's an island. And so this idea that giving a little more of your time, giving a little more distance to folks, or giving people a bit more grace, even outside of a Christian context, just like giving people a little more patience, like that's necessary now. It's necessary. If we're going to do this life thing together, it's important that we figure out how to do togetherness well. And so to all of us who are struggling with this sacrifice thing, just remember there's the togetherness thing, the all of us in this season together, that getting out of this season well requires us doing together well. Let that be the goal, let that be the goal. What life is there, without each other anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's zooming out there, right there. So I think last point, and then we'll go over to you, Marissa, or back to you for your today's tip for living well during Corona. But I think that the life of the soul and the life that we're called to live in is an endless iteration, I think, of moves of the heart, of responsiveness to knowing love, availability to God, to know his love, to allow that to be true, moves the heart to feel the pain of other human beings. Sometimes, though, it's a move of the will. Like, okay, this is hard right now. I don't really feel the move of the heart to actually feel badly for that person, but let me make a move of the will to do something good notwithstanding, which then informs the moves of the heart, which makes you available to that other person, which then in turn allows you to be more available to God's love to you, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not I don't state that as a prescriptive order for that, but I think it just kind of iterates and turns and cycles and cycles and cycles. And which moment am I in? Is it a movement of accepting God's love? Is it a movement of sharing God's love because I actually feel it? Is it a movement of overcoming my resistance to sharing God's love because it's a move of the will? I don't know. So these things, I think they continue to refine and reform us over time, and then eventually, as Lewis or Aristotle talked about with virtue, it becomes part of who you are because you practice it enough, and you eventually, like, you wake up one day and it's easier to do it than not do it. And that day is probably a long way away for most of us. At least it is for me. But that's the way it works somehow or other. Marissa, thanks so much for bringing up this topic with us all. And over to you for the today's tip for living well during Corona. Remember, we've got the folks in Nashville who are dying to bring us some music. Paul Coleman and Dan Haseltine.
That's right. Well, this will be very brief. This is a bit lighter for all of you. If you want a little musical joy today, our friend and musical legend Bono has gifted us all with an amazing gift for his 60th birthday. He created a playlist called 60 Songs That Saved My Life. And this playlist is, the farthest reaching playlist I think I've ever seen. You got like Pavarotti and Kendrick Lamar and Sinatra and Daft Punk and Billie Eilish. It's crazy. It's all over the place. But there's something in it for everyone. And so if you want to be sort of whisked away and get a little joy in a whole bunch of genres, why not check it out? It's on Spotify or YouTube Music. Get a little sunshine in your day through the 60 songs that saved his life. Back to you guys.
That's fantastic. Who doesn't love Bono? Right, Dan? Right, Paul?
Oh, yeah. Gotta love the Irish. They're all good. Yep. Yeah, so, here we are in Nashville. It's a great day today in Nashville. Actually, this week, there's a lot of really good music coming out in Nashville. I'm starting to see a lot in my social feed about different artists releasing albums. One of note, a Nashville staple artist, I would say, Jason Isbell, just put out his new record called Reunions, and definitely worth a couple good spins on the old Spotify or Apple, or if you're lucky enough to go grab a vinyl from a record shop, do that. American Aquarium put out their album that we were gifted to have BJ on the show with us. And it was amazing, and he did really well. And his album's out, and it's apparently climbing the charts, and definitely worth checking out. So that's the American Aquarium album, just came out, called Lamentations. So that's from Nashville. That's some of the stuff that we're doing today. My guest is a Nashvillian, but I'm sure as soon as he starts talking with his fake accent, you will recognize him that he's not from Nashville. Actually, I just joke about his fake accent because it's actually real. But my guest today is the incredibly talented Paul Coleman. Paul comes out of Australia, so it's good. And he, Paul's. This is sort of a funny thing, but when I was doing a little bit of research on Paul, even though I've known Paul and he's a friend, I was looking up some things, and it said that he's best known for his work with the Paul Coleman Trio, which is kind of like saying Dave Matthews is best known for his work with the Dave Matthews Band, but similar kind of thing. That Paul Coleman put out a couple great records as the Paul Coleman Trio. He's been part of the Christian music juggernaut of the Newsboys at different points. Paul is a fantastic music producer, songwriter. I've had the privilege of collaborating with Paul just a few times. One of the things I love about Paul is that he's found himself in a season where he's doing a lot of writing around really critiquing the Christian culture in a way that I think is vital and important. It's kind of the prophetic look at, what is Christian art really meant to do? What is it here for? Why do we experience it the way we do? How do we engage with it? And then how are we misusing it? And how can we use it better and tell better stories? So my good friend, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce him to you. This is Paul Coleman. Paul, how are you today?
I'm fabulous, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's good to see you. My first question always to artists is, in this season when everyone is either being very creative or maybe not at all, where anxiety could be highest, how are you holding up these days? How are you doing?
Well, I don't know how true this would be if the internet was shut off, but I think this time has shown me that the last 10 years that I've been in therapy and facing a lot of my demons, that I obviously have done some good work, because I haven't felt anxious, fearful, or isolated or lonely, and I live on my own. So internally, I felt peace. I felt good. I was on a tour bus in early March on the way to Connecticut to do a show, and we set up, and half an hour before the show, they canceled the show and then the tour, and then everything I had canceled. And so on the bus on the way back, I started dreaming up what I was going to do next. And that's what I've been doing. But in the creative side, I've been writing songs every day, and I found this time very inspirational for writing.
Yeah. Has that been, it's been inspirational to not simply just the discipline of writing, but actually getting up every morning and feeling the kind of that energy to be able to write.
Yeah. And I'm actually really enjoying not traveling.
Yeah.
I've forgotten how over it I was. So yeah, I started a brand new career. I'm in my third week of training, and testing, and it is definitely crazy. But I'm actually really enjoying it, and I'm actually finding that as I'm training and I've got 20 minutes off, I pick up my guitar and I start writing some stuff. And so that's always going to happen.
Good.
But I've decided to move in a completely different direction for a while, and who knows how long that will take. But I think writing, sharing music will always be a part of what I do, and who knows when it'll come back. It could be in 6 months, could be in 6 years. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think there's always a time where an artist has to take some breaks and gather stories, gather experiences, because we write our best songs when we're connecting those to real events, real things that happen to us. When it's, I've said this before on the show, but when songwriting is confessional and testimonial, where we're actually describing things we know and experience. And I think sometimes an artist can kind of get to a certain point where they've kind of finished that season and writing about certain things the way they wanted to write about them, and they have to go and gather and collect and have a different kind of experience of the world, and then they can jump back in and write a new batch of songs and describe the world back to some people differently. And I think that's kind of what you're doing now, so that's good.
I think so too, and I just want to rejoice, if you can hear it, in the fact that the guys mowing and zipping my apartment complex have just timed it perfectly to be outside my window right now, which I don't know if you're hearing it, but I'm enjoying it.
Good. I am not hearing it, but we'll have to give them credit in anything we record today. So let's have them sign a release. Kidding. Hey, Paul. So let's do this. I would really love to hear you play. I know you've got a couple songs that you have in your back pocket there. What would you be interested in playing for the good people today?
Want me to sing one song or two songs at this point? That will make a difference as to song selection.
We always go for two here. So okay. If you're up for it.
What I'll do is the first song I'll sing you is a song I wrote probably about 15 years ago. It's the most well-known song I have. So if you haven't heard this, you will understand how painful it's been for me traveling around in the last 15 years. But this song is kind of like story of my life a little bit. So it's called The One Thing. I'm going to give you the abridged version, Dan.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to go through the whole thing with 500 choruses and stuff. I mean,
I get that.
Get you to
well, unless the zipper outside or the guy with the lawnmower has a solo he wants to take. You just go where you need to go with it.
The good thing is, I think if he stays where he is, he's almost in a related key.
Good.
Not really. Here I am in a river of questions. Can I pour my heart out to a listening ear? Well, I see this life, its valleys and mountains, and I think of all the roads that brought me here. Oh, that brought me here. Well, I've questioned my reasons, this life I'm living. I question my ability to judge wrong from right. And I questioned all the things I've ever called certain. My race, my religion, my mowing guy, and my life. But the one thing I don't question is you. You really love me like you say you do. Yeah, the one thing I don't question is you. You really love me like you say you do. So hold me. Come on now, hold me. Take it to the bridge, Dan. Only one thing doesn't change. Only one thing stays the same. All I know at the end of the day is your love remains, yeah. Only one thing doesn't change. Only one thing stays the same. All I know at the end of the day is your love remains. And the one thing I don't question is you. You really love me like you say you do. Yeah, the one thing I don't question is you. A little bit of a guitar solo there. You're welcome. You really love me like you say you do.
Yeah. All right.
That was good.
Good stuff. Good.
Let's go.
Thank you. Of all the audience I've ever sung to, you are one of them.
All right. Good to be.
That was
Beat it.
amazing.
You always do that much improv?
Always do what?
That much improv?
Uh,
I would say yes. Every time I've seen you play, you have.
That is
Cool.
genius.
Yeah.
Man. What a gift
Yeah.
you got.
Yeah. One of the things that I've gotten, the reason I've gotten to spend some time with Paul has really been, Paul, it's been at a lot of music festivals where people have done kind of the incredible risky thing of saying, Paul, I'm going to hand you a microphone and I want you to kind of be the guy that gets up here and talks to people in between bands getting ready and all that kind of stuff. And I've always loved your ability to get up on stage and do all that kind of stuff, because that's not an easy gig for someone to take on, but you've always been great at doing that.
well, Dan, if you grew up in Australia where there's no circuit and your weekly shows are one in a jail and the next in a high school, which actually in Australia is a pretty smooth transition, but the next day is like you're invited by the Christian group to sing in the courtyard of the university, and then the next time you're singing in a pub, and then you're in a theater, and then you're in a church building. You have to learn to read the crowd. You have to learn to improvise. You have to learn to see what's in front of you and make what you do appropriate. But if I'd grown up in America being a Christian musician where there's this circuit and I can just do the same set every time and people, then I wouldn't be as rounded. I think it's just got to do with where I grew up.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a big part of it. I think you've got some inherent talent in that too, though. So I'm going to give you that credit.
I got that in writing and put it on my website.
Yes, I know. I owe you that too. Actually, that's good. We should make sure we hit that. Yeah, because are you doing some more songwriting workshop stuff? Right. This is a very cool thing that you're doing.
Well, that's the thing I do at Soulfest. When I do songwriting workshops, I mean, I start off with a big disclaimer and I say, I don't look at my songs and think I'm a great songwriter. I look at other people's songs and I feel that way. So when someone thinks my song's great, it kind of freaks me out, makes me happy, but I don't go in with that feeling of like, oh yeah, I write songs. I can help you guys. I more come from the direction of I think everybody can contribute to a songwriting process. And if you just have a thought, then someone can get that thought and start writing a song. Or if you just have some words, or if you just have a melody, if you just got a nice chord progression. So I try to empower people to get involved in the process of writing songs and let them believe that if they heard a Jars of Clay song,
oh yeah,
when it first came out in the practice room, they might think, really? How did they win a Grammy over the Paul Coleman trio that year? How did that?
Oh, we're bringing that up now.
I have no bitterness about that.
Yes, it's fine.
But yeah,
Fine,
so
well,
I just encourage people to get involved in the process, and if what they're creating doesn't sound like the song on the hit radio, that's because those people did not sound like that when they first started working on it. So that's what I try to focus on.
Yeah, I think that's valuable. I think just the ability to empower people. The one thing that feels consistent across the artist spectrum is that everybody second guesses the things that they're creating or their ability to create. And so to be able to offer someone just an opportunity to have a little bit more confidence is so valuable. So I'm glad you're doing that. Paul, would you be interested in playing us another song? Do you have your lawn mowing team out there? Are they prepared? Are they ready?
They're going to feature a little bit more in this one. This is a bit more of a gentle strumming song.
Okay.
This involves two strings. When I was in the Newsboys, Peter Furler and I were the guitar players, and we agreed that I played 4 strings and he played 2, and together we were one guitar player, and even then not the best. But this is a song that might describe something you gave in that very nice introduction, Dan. I can't believe that Dan from Jars of Clay researched me. Can I get that in writing too, if you don't mind?
Of course. It's recorded now, so yeah.
Mate, it's imprinted in the world forever.
It is.
This is a song that is a confession. How long have I got to introduce this song? Have I got 2 minutes?
You got time.
Okay, so for those listening, for those guys in the panel there and everyone, when I first came to America to try to make it in music, I traveled the world trying to be signed to any sort of record label. And in the end, the only place that was interested was the Christian music world in America. And so I also, what I didn't realize until therapy was how unbelievably driven I was and fueled by a lot of things that were not healthy. A lot of rejection, a lot of codependence. I didn't know what that phrase meant for quite a while. A lot of shame And so a lot of things driving me to try to make a success of myself were not the love of God, the grace of God, the kindness, the fruits of the Spirit. I was driven. And so every time I got to know somebody, like in Jars of Clay, I first met Matt.
Mm-hmm.
That is a story in itself. I do not have time to tell. But I would, once I got his number and I went back to Australia, I'd call him every day. Like, and I even followed him once I was in Nashville. I followed him from where he was to a restaurant and then waited for him to leave and then turned up next to his car with my guitar and I said, would you listen to a song? And Matt's like, oh, okay, well, I got to kind of go, but sure. I think, I guess, Kristen, can we? Yeah, okay. So I played him a song and was that a pretty good impersonation?
That was actually really good.
Okay. And then at the end of it, I said, could you just give me a statement? He goes, okay, maybe write, Paul Coleman's music has made an impact on me. So when I say I was driven and there was so much, I have to say God's kindness towards me is something I cannot stop talking about because I was so driven to try to make something happen. And yet, because he's so kind and so graceful, he still used me to share thoughts with other people. And so this song is a retrospective confession that I recently wrote. And Dan said he really liked this song. That, you can't see this right now, but that's actually blown up on my wall here. This is great, Dan. And you can't see it. I don't want to show you, but I've just told you, but it's the font is significant. All right.
Good.
So this is called Jesus in Show Business. It's a little bit out of tune, but Bob Dylan would say that is in tune. They put Jesus in show business. They made him a white guy with baby blue eyes, perfect nose and a lamb on his shoulder, chiseled cheekbones and the safest replies. They put Jesus in show business. He got his own station on cable TV. The lack of money is the root of all evil, said a man with a jet plane and pearly white teeth. They took him down off the cross, put him up on the stage, and they made people pay to hear them sing his name. And they took all the cash and built mansions on the hill. Now there's a code at the gate, 'cause they put Jesus in show business. We put Jesus in show business, took words from the Bible and put chords to them. We called them our own and we filled up the arena, and we called it a blessing when the money rolled in. We took him down off the cross, put him up on the stage, and we made people pay to hear us sing his name. And we took all the cash and we gave it to the man who could keep us in power and keep Jesus in show business. Whoa, 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 yeah, yeah, whoa, 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 yeah, oh, yeah. I put Jesus in show business. I said it was him, but it was me on my mind. I used his name to further my kingdom. I said I could see, but I was totally blind. So I knelt at the cross and I burnt down the stage, face to the ground, and I wept as I prayed. Forgive me and teach me how to be less, and to never ever put Jesus in show business.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
There you go. Thanks, Paul. That was great.
Wow.
Man, well, it's
And
so good to see
love
you.
the story.
Yeah.
You love the intro story, man. Thanks so much for sharing a little bit of your storyline. We really are grateful for anybody who's high on the keeping it real quotient, and obviously you're very high on the real quotient. So
I think the first step in that was my wife saying, "That's it, you're and I don't want to live with you anymore." Wait, me? Me? I named the band the Paul Coleman Trio. It wasn't narcissism. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I went to therapy the next day.
Yeah. And every day since, right? And that matters.
And the days I co-write with you, Dan, I count as 3 just because of the emotional stress.
Good. And that's $175 an hour, though. I don't know. I've seen that yet. So speaking of show business. No, I'm kidding. All right. Good. Well, Paul, it's so good to have you on the show. Thanks for coming in here with us from Nashville. I'm glad you're well. I'm glad you're doing great. I look forward to this new season with you and to hear what songs come out of it as you take on this next great challenge of life. So we'll kick it back to you guys up in the northern region of the United States. Back to you, John.
Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for being with us. Again, thank our friends from around the world that are joining us from around the globe. It just blows our mind every day. Just know that we're praying for you. We think about you. We talk about you. We ask God to intervene on your behalf, to let you know that you're loved, that you can live in light and life, that God's got you, and that we're here for you. We're going to keep coming back every day. We hope you will too. Until then, keep fighting the good fight, and God bless you all.